Welcome to this mandolin lesson where we're going to discuss how we go about accompanying singers. This is aimed at intermediate players, so if it's a little easy for you, then there is an advanced lesson this month which contains a difficult tune, and if it's too hard for you, then there's a beginner lesson about chords as well. So there's two scenarios that I see as our options when we play with singers. The first one is when there's also a guitarist present in the ensemble, and the second one is where there kind of isn't a guitarist in the ensemble and we're having to provide the bulk of the chordal noise. The first of those options is the quicker one, so we're going to have a look at that first. So I call this the Bluegrass Way of accompanying singers, but it's kind of a bit more simply the staying out of the way. And the idea is we're in an ensemble, there's a guitarist, there's a singer, there's a bass player, there might be a fiddle player, there might be a piano player. It really doesn't matter what the instrument lineup is. What is important is the fact that someone else is playing an instrument that's covering the wider chord notes. So the most important thing for us mandolin players is to stay out of the way. Stay out of the way of the singer, and stay out of the way of the guitarist and not ruin any of their chords. So I call this the Bluegrass Way because when I am in this situation, I rely on the bluegrass chop chords. So for this, we're going to use Sitting on Top of the World as an example. And in a minute, I'm going to rope in my bandmate Jay to provide the role of guitarist and singer, so you can hear how this sounds. But just before we do, first of all, everything we discuss in this lesson is in a free tab, if you click the link below. And the chord progressions I would like you to play for this particular version of Sitting on Top of the World, and we're doing it in C because that suits J voice. That's another thing that singers do when they turn up. They sing songs in keys you're not used to. So I'd like you to use this C, so kind of the bluegrass 3-chord closed C without hitting this E string. And then this C7, 3-2-3. And then when it goes to F, this F, so 5-3, and if you can reach, you can put the 1 in, but I tend not to. I just go 5-3-0. So that's sounds like that. So we've got C, C7, F, and then G, just the simple 3-finger G, or 4-finger if you can reach. I'm not going to force you between either. And then A minor, I'm just going to go for that nice simple one there, 2-2-3, and again you can put the little finger in if you know it. The chord shapes is not the important bit in this. What's important is the rhythm and that we stay the heck out of the way. So we're going to do it with Jay in a second, but just so you know what I'm going for, I'm just going for the bass strum, where the bass is just more of a guide than an actual note. I don't want this, because that just gets in everyone's way. What we want is this. So you can hear how that bass is more of a guide note to help me count the chords rather than that. So that's how it's going to sound. We'll do it a few times around with Jay, and what I want you to really focus on for this first part is staying out of the way, letting the singing and let the guitar do all the work.
Was in the spring, one sunny day, my good girl left me and went away. Now she's gone and I don't worry. I'm sitting on top of the world.
We're going to do it again. that is definitely the easier way to accompany singers. We don't have to do a lot there. The harder way is the situation I find myself in quite a lot, which is where you are, as the mandolin player, expected to provide a lot of the chordal noise. There's no guitar, there's no keyboards. In my situation, I quite end up playing in a band with just fiddle and bass and mandolin, so the mandolin has to do a lot of work. So first thing that I do is I simplify my chords so I can get as many open strings as possible. So, same song, I'm going to stick with Sitting on Top of the World. I'm going to go back to just this really simple 2-finger C chord. Nothing wrong with that. Really useful chord. Same C7, because we still need that one. Same F chord, because there's a nice open string in there. Simple G chord. And then same A minor chord. So there's not much change in terms of chord shapes, just a couple of extra open strings, but it makes all the difference. The difference between that to that. You can hear how much more open it is. So, once we've got our chord shapes, we need to start looking at what rhythms we can do. And before we do, I think it's probably best I play you what we're heading towards. So this is kind of what we're thinking of, and I'll do it over the chord progression to Sitting on Top of the World. So, a lot more open, a lot more filling of space. Basically, I'm trying to pretend I'm a guitar, and I'm doing that by rhythms in my right hand, and so that's what we'll have a little look at now. I could spend hours talking about this, so I'm just going to give you 5 examples of what you can do with the right hand. So, example 1, and bear in mind that these are all built on the very simple bass strum rhythm. That's our starting point for all of these. So example 1, don't forget, tab downloadable below if you want to have a look, is adding an upstroke after the second beat. So sounds like this. So there's your up, 1, 2 and 3, 4. See, adding it on the and of 2. I'll just play it round on a C chord. So you're just catching that E on your way back. The next example adds the upstroke straight away, so it's on the and of 1. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. I'll just keep going to give you a chance to catch up. 1. Example 3 has something that I use quite a lot, and that's actually just a very bold rest on beat 3. So it's and then an upstroke on the and of 4. So this has got 2 elements going. It's got a rest and then an upstroke. So I'll just loop it and you can catch up. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and. Yeah, so I do that a lot. I put rests in a lot. Because if you're letting the notes ring out, your right hand doesn't have to play all the time because those notes are still going on. So don't be afraid to add the odd rest in. Okay, example 4, starting to get quite complicated now. So we're adding 2 upstrokes on the and of 3 and the and of 4. So we've still got our bass strum to start. And then... And at this point, I'd like to say I'm not being too accurate with what my right hand's doing. My aim is to get kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 4 strings, but I'm being quite loose with that. So don't sit there too much going. Just let your right hand pretty free and allow it to hit whichever 4 strings it decides to, roughly in that order. So let's try example 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2. And that is the one I use most often, kind of a sequence of 4 notes together. And the final example, very similar, except the last note is back towards the starting point rather than the highest string. So sounds like that. Let's try it together. 3, 4. So the main few things I want you to take away from this lesson is how effective those chords can be, and they're all built on open strings ringing out. They're all built on adding upstrokes to create interest. They still have bass strum kind of running through them, hinted at. Not afraid to add rest notes in, and they're all built on the simple chord shapes. It's kind of, you can do it with harder chord shapes, but that you're restricting the kind of range of tones that you can emit in that situation. Don't forget, we're trying to be most of the noise in the setup here, so open strings are everything. There's one final thing that I want to mention before we dive in and try Sitting on Top of the World, and that is sliding into the chord. If we take the C chord, and I'll come up close for this, instead of going straight to 2 and 3, I tend to do a strum on 1 and 2 and slide into 2 and 3. So it sounds like this. So you basically, you strum a down on this and then slide into the right chord. And you generally put that on the first beat of a chord change. So, and then on the F, and then back to the C, G. So that's a really useful technique, and I do it all the time, so often, little slides into chords. So have a little practice of that yourself, sliding into those chords. It'll make a big difference. What we're going to do now is I'm going to get my bandmate, Jay Bradbury, to sing Sitting on Top of the World again, but this time she's going to have a fiddle in her hand, and she's just going to be doing little fiddle chops. So it's going to be up to us to provide all the notes and the tones and the rhythms. If you have the time, I would suggest trying each of the examples all the way through the tune. So we just did 5 rhythm examples, try all 5. And what you want at the end is a mixture of both, mixture of all of them, all 5 examples. On the tab below, I've tabbed out one way I would do it. And that's how I'm going to play it when I'm accompanying Jay, but I suggest and encourage you to try your own version and get that right hand nice and free and some nice upstrokes in there.
Was in the spring, one sunny day, my good girl left me and went away. Now she's gone, and I don't worry. I'm sitting on
have it. Hopefully you've been able to see what I'm trying to get at with this lesson in terms of accompanying singers with our two options. The easier one, staying the heck out of the way, and the second one, where it's up to us and we have to fill in a lot of the gaps with right hand and open strings without losing that kind of bass strum pattern that kind of seeps through. If you have any questions, I've linked Mando mic below. Let me know. Please do sign up to the mailing list and hit subscribe down in the corner. Hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you next month.